it would be all right.
Okay,
Excellent.
good morning to everyone.
Good morning.
I'm so happy to be here today, our 70th Happy Hour online. And today we have a special guest, George Lupascu-Pruna.
Lupascu-Pruna, yes, thank you.
Welcome to Happy Hour on the internet. Today, he's going to be talking to us about the war in Ukraine. We'll have a brief session with George, who's accredited practitioner on cultural differences and social evolution. And we'll explore what is happening in Ukraine, why it happens, and how different countries in the world react to this. Questions could be asked. So if you have any doubts, do send us on our WhatsApp or on our Facebook. George has a passion on social evolution and how group mentality works. George, welcome, and I pass you the microphone. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mireille. Nice to see everybody here. The most important thing about these discussions is to actually make them as a discussion. So I can present anything and we will see, and you will see things the way you were educated to see them. So the most important thing is to ask questions. Now, I did prepare a brief presentation, but mostly as a structure. And also, if we would have an audience, I prepared the sort of a poll. Are we allowed to broadcast it? I mean, do we have people that can connect to it?
Well, yes, because we transmit through Facebook, so people can also send messages on Facebook. So if I have any questions, I will let you know. Okay, do you want to share the screen? You can share the screen, George.
Yep, let me do that. Let's see, enable the presentation and I should be able to share the screen.
Perfect.
All right. Yeah, you can see it, yeah?
Not yet, now yes. Perfect.
All right, so briefly about myself, I have more than 17 years of experience in corporate and leadership psychology, and aside from this, I'm also licensed on organizational culture and cultural differences, and I have a passion for these societal evolutions and how the various group mentalities work. Now, the way I structured this brief presentation, and I'm not going to present a lot of material here, but I'm going to present whatever was already recorded, so various sources from YouTube.
Okay.
So as a structure, we go into the background, into Ukraine's societal development after 2000, then the two invasions, because there was an invasion in 2014, and now there is another invasion, and opinions, various opinions from across the world. Plus, I will highlight some of the errors that I found over and over. But the most important thing, and maybe we will not have the possibility to evaluate that, is the audience. So who is watching this now? And for that, I created several polls. If I would get a chance to get some voting on this, then I would be able to address the questions much easier.
I see.
If people can connect to this poll, so it's pollf.com/George Lupascu 390, they could vote. But I don't know if we have the time to do that.
I don't think so, not this time, but
Okay.
people will see it, and we can leave your email so that people can connect with you in the near future.
Okay, we'll see if we actually have the time for that, but it's important at least to go through this because we evaluate the audience. And my question to the audience would be, which of the following statements describe your reality the best? As an individual, I feel empowered to live my life as I want with some constraints. Or we are all at the mercy of our governments, or there are no constraints in terms of what I can do or who I can become, or there is always someone else that has more control over our lives. Depending on where you
personally
fit,
I would say the last one applies. You know, you think you have control, but you don't.
well, as we would have seen, this is variable across cultures.
Yes.
So people from some countries believe more the first one, others the second, the third, and the fourth one. And that's why they also take a different stand when a big country invades a smaller country. And I also wanted to ask, in which period of time do you consider that humans lived in the most comfortable way? And I would have asked the audience to
express, yeah, which period was better.
And why is this important? Is because in this period of time that we're living now, up to the Russian invasion of Ukraine, we could have said that things are developing in a constructive manner. So we went through a pandemic that we felt in a much more comfortable manner than the pandemic that we had 100 years ago. And things were sort of developing constructively. But with this invasion, we sort of were pushed back 100 years in time, because now any country is justified to invade another country and just invent a reason for that.
That is dangerous. That is
dangerous. And yeah, we will see what will happen.
The
next.
outcome.
But, yeah. And a third question that I would have for the audience, and of course, the audience can evaluate on their own these questions, but it's good to know that the way you evaluate this, let's say the answer to the question, will make you take a stand on the invasion of Ukraine, the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Which do you consider to be a successful and fulfilling life? To manage to accumulate wealth, prosperity, properties, so that you can enjoy life in the most comfortable manner, to contribute to the development of science or technology with research, ideas, and innovations, to ensure your traditions are transmitted to the next generation, to focus on your family, to party as much as possible and enjoy every moment, disregarding the societal constraints, or to add your contribution to the evolution of the overall society in this very interconnected present world?
I would say a little bit of each.
But you have to make a choice, because that will make you support one group or the other.
Yes.
You know, so that will make you, it can make you a very good consumer. It can make you a person that supports the autocratic regimes. It can make you support something that is more like a liberal regime, which other countries consider that, yeah, that's it's naive to do that.
Yeah. I quite like the contribution of the development of science and technology for research ideas and innovation, because we are evolving and things are changing, and you need technology to better life, people's conditions, you know, so that would be a positive contribution for me, you know.
Good. it is a safe stand.
Mm-hmm.
And,
yeah. Obviously, focus on your family. Sure, you know, it's important. Family, the future generations, you know, the children, the grandchildren, you know, so that is also very important in our lives. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Accumulate wealth. I wouldn't like to be accumulating wealth, but as long as I have the basic needs, you know, to have a dignified lifestyle, you know, a roof over my head, a plate of food on the table, you know, the basic needs that humanity needs to survive, you know.
That's why the answer is framed like that, because there are individuals in all the societies
yes,
that go for that believe that's the purpose in life. And then depending on the society, they will be enabled to do so. And
yes.
the majority of the autocratic societies stay like that because of these individuals. Mm-hmm. And then it's not that you remove those and then there will be a democracy. It doesn't work like that.
No.
Because if the society is built like that, new ones will come. New people that want to hoard resources will come to place and will treat the others bad.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to ask you, talking about this situation, for example, when the Soviet Union collapsed and people became so-called more democratic and free, what shock was caused to the people? Because until then, the regime they were being subject was very strict. They were not allowed to have wealth. They lived at the basic needs, right? As far as I understand. And suddenly they found they had a so-called freedom. For someone who's been conditioned for such a long time, to suddenly feel, oh, I am free, it's a shock. Do you agree?
I agree, but we need to revise a little the let's say, points at which this happened, because there were several presidents of the Soviet Union that tried to bring Russia to the Soviet Union to the modern times. And then Gorbachev managed to put in place this perestroika. So the reforming of the Soviet Union, and he started that, exactly what you're mentioning, with giving people more freedom. He started that sometimes in the 80s.
That's right.
And then the fall of the Soviet Union was not the, let's say, it didn't have the purpose to give people more freedom. It happened because the nations inside the Soviet Union wanted to have independence.
Yes, freedom.
But not freedom, because it didn't guarantee freedom for the individuals. And most of the republics that were taken apart continued to struggle, and that fall of the Soviet Union was very harsh, felt by the individuals. We need to understand that it was a shock for the majority of the individuals in Soviet Union. It was a shock, and they felt it as a bad thing because everything collapsed. And all the republics tried to create something more constructive. And we can see what path Belarus took, what path Ukraine took, what path the Baltics took. You know, we can see what path the Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Turkmenistan took, you know, and they all took different paths. And it didn't offer, at least in the moment, freedom to the individuals. Ukraine was one of the countries that, with their constitution, wanted to do that, wanted to reach a place in which it's better for more humans.
Yes.
But we have to understand that it had the same premises as Belarus had. Still, we see where Belarus is and we see where Ukraine is. And
how are the younger generation facing this?
Let me jump to a little background. Yeah, I stopped.
That's
that
okay.
because I want to share now some background into Ukraine after 2000. Because the young generation and in general, the younger generations all over the world are influenced by social media.
Sure.
And which is not necessarily bad. I mean, it gives a sense of, it gives
it's a two-edged weapon, as we say. Two-edged weapon. Yeah.
Exactly. But the more educated you are, the more you can process things and sort of feel the connection with cultures that are far away from you. You know, so
it opens your mind.
Yes.
Yeah, opens the horizon.
Or it feeds your ignorance.
Yep.
Or as you said, there are two things. It opens your mind or it feeds your ignorance.
Exactly.
Let me share now some of the brief history that happened in Ukraine after 2000. Okay, this one we don't need. And I'm not going to show you the clips. I can send definitely the links, but the audience can watch them. The Orange Revolution. I'm just going to briefly describe what happened. So there was one politician by name Yushchenko that promised that he will bring the society to a more free level, you know, that he will cooperate more with the European Union. And the other politician, which was Yanukovych, he was backed by Kremlin. And then they stole the elections. You know, so, and even then there was a big trial, there was a big protest, this Orange Revolution. And then there was a big protest in which people said, no, give us good elections. We want elections that are not corrupted. And it was a long protest. It was a peaceful protest. The police was with the protesters, but there were some rumors that they would send the army in, which they didn't. And after some time, they agreed that they will have new elections. And they had new elections, and the liberal person, so Yushchenko, won. And now,
how many parties did they have?
I don't know. But there were, I mean, in Eastern Europe, in general, the parties change all the time. So it's not like a tradition like in the US with Republicans and Democrats. No, they change all the time.
Here in Brazil, we have so many different parties. It's unbelievable. Well, but it's too much. I think you should have, yes, the right, the left, and somewhere in between, you know, to maintain the balance of things. But here it goes to 38 or something ridiculous, you know, and they make a lot of money.
From my point of view, okay, but from my point of view, it's better to allow that freedom, and then maybe at some point some party manages to
they join forces
and manages to create a good vision for more humans to live better together.
Yeah.
Now, coming back to this brief history of Ukraine, because it would be important to understand also this Orange Revolution that happened in like 2004. And then Yushchenko got elected after they had real elections, and he couldn't transform the country as fast as people wanted. Okay, and then because of that, in the next elections, which were between Yanukovych and Timoshenko, Yulia Tymoshenko, Yanukovych won. And he was elected for real. So there was, I mean, we don't know if that was rigged or not. And now what happened next is that this Yanukovych, who's the person that is backed by Kremlin, and not a very smart person, from all the speeches that we could see and from all the things that he did, I wouldn't say he was a very smart person. He put in jail his opponent. And yeah, people said, well, that's not fair. I mean, we know that she's not clean, like any other politician in Eastern Europe or in other countries in development, but that's not fair. So they started protesting. And then what this Yanukovych regime did, they forbid protests.
When you say she wasn't clean, in what sense? Was she corrupt?
Well, I cannot say that, but
no. But when they made
yes.
this criticism that she wasn't clean, what was the
Well, like all the majority of the politicians, the majority have some dirt on them, and then it's up to the political class. And ideally, it's up to the juridical system to highlight that. So in an ideal country, the juridical system would come into place and would prosecute all of them. But in this case, it was the opponent. So from a political stand, the opponent said, she was the opposition. His opposition has to go to jail. From all the other politicians that could have been prosecuted. And that wasn't pleasant for the Ukrainians. They started protests. And then these protests were around 2011, 2012. Okay, and now why this is important is because some outlets claim that the Maidan protests were backed by the US. Okay, and then I want to give this, to construct the context that, look, it wasn't, I mean, maybe there were some American politicians that said that, we support you. Fine, there could have been politicians from all over the world to come there and say, we support you, because also this protest against removing the possibility to protest. So once they started to protest to free up Yulia Tymoshenko, immediately Yanukovych said it's forbidden to protest. They passed a law, and this is a law that is similar to what they have in Russia. That in order to protest, you have to take some I don't know, you have to apply to get allowed
permission.
To protest. Permission. Then it's like, well, what is that? I mean, you do something that I don't like, and then I have to get permission from you to tell you that I don't like it.
It's not very democratic.
It's not very logical. So no. I don't want to use the term democratic because it's very confusing. It was used by many, let's say, powers in wrong ways. So now people confuse it. They don't really understand what that is.
Yeah, well, if you have freedom of speech, then whether you're in favor or against the government, that's okay. Let them listen to you. Maybe they could learn something too, if they care for the people. That is.
Yes. and this removing the possibility to protest was something that the Ukrainians felt like, well, no. And then they protested continuously. So they still protested. And then Yanukovych was elected on a promise that he will, let's say, connect Ukraine with the EU more. And then in November of 2013, he changed his mind. He said that, no, we will not do anything with the EU. And then the students came to protest. And after 1 week, so this is November 2013. And then after 1 week, he sent the special forces. And look, this is another
yes, I
video.
can see protest. Yeah.
Yeah, I can share all the links. So all the links to these videos, and it's not my material. They are made by outlets that I sort of saw how biased they can be, but the majority of the material is has facts. So it's not an interpretation.
Yeah, it's trustworthy. You can trust. So yeah.
And so Yanukovych sends in the special forces to beat up the students. And that is the moment when a lot of Ukrainians came to the streets and blocked Maidan. And then this Maidan revolution was against Yanukovych. It wasn't against Russia. And it wasn't a US-backed revolution. It was like, look, this president has to go. It's not okay to treat us like that. Yeah, you can protest for anything, and then it's up to the government to discuss it, to find a peaceful way to solve the problem. And I remember, so I caught both the protests in 2012 for freeing up Yulia Tymoshenko and this one. And then there was a delegation from the EU that came and mediated the negotiations. And that delegation even mentioned, like, look, we agreed with Yanukovych that there will be new elections sometimes in May. But the protesters said, no, we want him out now. And then, yeah, there were clashes and some people died, but Yanukovych left in the end. So on the 21st of February, he fled to Russia.
I've got a vague memory at the time seeing it on the news.
Yeah. So he went, let me see if I can share the next one. Yeah, he fled to Russia, and that was the moment, so that's what happened on Maidan. That was the moment when Russia started to bring in Crimea, to bring in their special forces, which they called the self-defense, you know, and they were known as the little green men. And you can see even people saying, like, why did you come here? Well, we don't need to be protected in Crimea.
Yeah.
And by the 15th of March, they brought in so many people, they seized Crimea, and they created a referendum to say that Crimea joins Russia. And now, one interesting thing about that is that in Crimea, there were like 13% Tatars that wouldn't have voted for that because they were deported by Stalin in Siberia, and they managed to return after the 80s back to their home in Crimea. And then for sure they wouldn't have voted for the annexation. And the annexation came out with like 96% that people are in favor. Okay. And now, very important to know is that, yeah, there were people that were for Russia, and there were people that said, we don't feel threatened in any way. Plus, Yanukovych, when he fled Ukraine, he fled with a lot of money. So the country was really in tough conditions. And now, yeah, of course, they started also some movements in Donbass. And by then, the Ukrainian army managed to somehow improve, and they could stand, you know, take a stand. And they managed to defend, for example, the taking of Mariupol, because Russia wanted to take Mariupol at that time.
Yeah, Mariupol, yeah.
But they blocked it. And then since, so there was a big war then in August of 2014, and then ongoing until 2022, there was this hybrid war in which there were cyber attacks on Ukraine, there were other shelling on both sides. So whatever they took from Ukraine with the separatists, and we have to accept that there were Ukrainians that wanted to be with Russia for some reasons.
Yeah.
And on both sides, there were this
yes.
shelling. There were several agreements in Minsk, which apparently didn't lead to much.
No.
And now, in 2022, so on the 24th of February, they decided that, yep, we have to take the whole Ukraine. And that's why they entered from the north, they entered from the south, from Crimea, from east. So this would be the background to what's happening now in Ukraine. From a societal point of view, the fall of the Soviet Union happened because it's not natural for, let's say, nations to be treated like they were in the past. So we are so interconnected that we can see what's possible out there.
Sure.
That's why also Russia decided to forbid Facebook, Twitter, and all this in Russia, so that the Russians inside don't know what's happening outside.
Because then you limit for people's vision and horizon. So
yeah, you can feed them only whatever you want.
Exactly, brainwash. So you call it brainwash them.
And from my point of view, teaching people critical thinking would help create a better world. Because so Russia now is claiming that they entered all the way to Kiev and they were in Bucha, in that massacre place. And then when they removed their troops from there, they left some horrors. So yeah, people that were murdered, burned, violated, raped. Whoa, you cannot imagine. And they were claiming that these were the Ukrainians that did it.
Yeah.
You have to ask the question. So the country is being invaded. There are lots of soldiers, foreign soldiers, tanks coming into your country, and then you use your resources to stage a fake massacre.
Doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and this is what we've seen in the area that is freed up. Because Mariupol is not. Mariupol is taken now. The whole south is taken now.
Yes.
And unfortunately, they are progressing. And they claim to be freeing up various cities, but they actually wipe them out of existence. So they destroy all the buildings, they destroy...
no, it is. It's absolutely shocking to see how the destruction of human beings and buildings.
Yeah,
and Ukraine has a lot of historical buildings and monuments and all that's going,
there is
their identity. You're destroying not only life, but the identity of that country.
I disagree. I think that the identity now is much stronger.
No. I'm talking identity in the sense of these historical buildings.
Yes, that's correct.
In that sense.
Look, the majority of the cities that are bombarded now are like Kharkiv, Chernihiv, Mariupol. Those were cities in which the Ukrainians were traditionally speaking Russian. And they were feeling Ukrainian, so in Ukraine is this, that, I am a Ukrainian, but my mother tongue is Russian. And they are as nationalistic as any other Ukrainian, just that they speak another language. Like we would say in Switzerland. Yes. I'm an Italian speaking Swiss, or I'm a French speaking
or French
Swiss,
or German.
Yeah, it's similar. And then now many Ukrainians that were born speaking Russian refused to speak Russian because that language was used for the invasion. And yeah, I think that Putin achieved exactly the opposite. So for a little piece of land, he managed to put so much hatred on the Russians. And I think that a few generations, the Ukrainians will not forgive them. And it is really doubtful that the Ukrainian identity will diminish in any way, or the Ukraine as a country will, I don't know, be weaker. Yeah, they might use bombs, they might use something that somebody would have done 100 years ago. And the Russians do now this invasion in front of the cameras. Yeah. So they bring on themselves and on the culture a lot of hatred from all over the world.
Mm-hmm. Do you think this will continue for much longer, George? What do you visualize?
I hope that by August it's done. So I hope that by August things stop, because there is a lot of pressure on Russia. Mm-hmm. The Ukraine will never give up. So I think they would rather have the whole country destroyed than to give up, because it's not an option to be treated like that. And we could see also in Belarus. In Belarus, there were lots of protests because people want a different thing. And we can see that it's possible and it's not hard. It's just that the person that is leading the country has to accept, has to give up that, let's say, king feeling. And now, if we still have a little time, I recommend to the audience to listen to
him. Yes,
Noah Harari.
Yes,
from all the speeches that I've heard, or all the positions that I've heard, I couldn't find any error in his. So everything that he says makes perfect sense, and he can see it from a broad point of view and how this will affect the societal evolution.
Yeah, because one thing that I wanted to ask you, how what percentage of Jewish people are living or were living in Ukraine, in these areas? Were there many Jewish people?
You ask because of the denazification term?
No, because I know Yuval, he's Israeli.
He's from Israel.
Yes.
It doesn't matter. I mean, I didn't choose him for that. It's just that he really made sense.
Oh, no, I know that because I know him. I've heard him, his speeches many times, and I like what he says. No, I'm saying because I'm Jewish myself, and I know that in Russia there was many Jews, and also I assume in Ukraine, right?
Well, there were everywhere, and now I cannot say a number, but from my feeling is that Odessa is sort of more with, it's felt like there is more Jewish
there.
history there. And also they have Uman, in which the Hasidic Jews are coming every year to visit. And guess what? One of the first bombs that Russia sent it to Uman, and they say that they want to denazify. And another thing related to this denazification.
Nonsense.
So they want to denazify a country that didn't have the same president for 2 terms in a row since the 1990s. And then even between the 2 wars, so after the Maidan Revolution, Poroshenko was elected, and after his term ended, his opposition was elected, this Mr. Zelensky. And, you know, and he started prosecuting him. Of course, the organs that are juridical started prosecuting him. So then my question is, how can a country that is changing presidents be called a Nazistic country?
Yes.
You know? So
it doesn't make sense.
Again, we have to look at critical thinking.
Yeah.
One other thing that I wanted to show, so for the whole audience, I recommend to watch Mr. Harari's speech, because it's very nice. He points out some very nice trends and unfortunately some unfortunate trends.
Yes.
And now you will also see these guys' speech. It's Marsheimer, and he calls himself a professor of geopolitics. And because of his errors, lots of people from around the world fail to support Ukraine. They say that this is a war between Russia and the US. And it's not. Yes, US is helping, and US might have done lots of bad things in the past. We can mention the invasion of Iraq in 2003, which happened not under the social media. So what was different then, it was that people were not so interconnected like now, which doesn't excuse it. So it was as bad. Now, some of the things that I want to highlight from this guy, from this Marsheimer's presentation, is that there is a NATO expansion and there is a EU expansion that the US is fostering, and that the US backed the Orange Revolution. Now, again, the audience has to use critical thinking and understand all those, all the context that I gave, how the Orange Revolution happened, how they stole it, how they won it, normal election. And then guess what? 5 years later, they weren't satisfied with Yushchenko and they elected Yanukovych, you know, so that should allow you to think that maybe the Orange Revolution wasn't US backed. Now, coming to the NATO expansion, we have to see what Russia did in Chechnya. You know, in the 90s, there were two Chechen wars. And Grozny, the capital, was wiped out of existence. At that time, Russia claimed that those people are terrorists, you know, and then the, I don't know, civilized world didn't interfere. They said that, well, if they claim it like that, I don't know. Then there was the invasion of Georgia. Something moved in the West. Then there was the first invasion of Ukraine. You know? And then between 2014 and 2022, there were 8 years in which Ukraine wanted something, wanted some protection. So what I'm saying is that if Trinidad and Tobago would offer a military alliance, Ukraine would say, yes, we want it. So this is not really NATO expansion, it's more fear of Russia. And then the majority of the countries that are in the vicinity of Russia would want any type of protection. And yes, NATO is a business and they take money from the countries in exchange for protection. From a simple citizen's point of view, it's good enough. You know, life is complex. And maybe NATO is led by the Americans, but at least there is no war between the NATO countries. Before the First World War, there were wars every 5-10 years. And then there were some alliances, and then there was the Second World War. And because of the blockade of Berlin that Russia staged, the Western countries decided, well, let's create an alliance, and they created this NATO. So that's on NATO expansion. When somebody tells you that NATO is expanding, tell them that the people from the countries that are neighboring Russia want with all price to be part of something that would protect them from Russia. And look, this invasion made both Finland and Sweden apply.
Yes.
And now the last one, which is really beautiful. This guy, this Marshiner, claims that the US is behind the EU expansion. Okay, and now look at this EU expansion. Ukraine is trying to get in the EU for, I don't know, 10 years. So it's so hard to get in the EU. You have to fulfill so many criteria that for me it's ludicrous to call it an EU expansion. And then to call it that the Americans or the US is behind it. And yeah, we use this term democracy, but it's slightly different.
Yeah, somehow they want to get a bad image for the states. You know, they create
this guy just wanted to make it special, to say that, yeah, he's against the mainstream.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, what he achieved is he decreased the support of the other nations for Ukraine. And then the other nations, some of the other nations just said that, well, yeah, this is a war between Russia and the US, which is not. Yeah, US and the other states are helping, but at the end of the day, it is the decision of Ukraine and the Ukrainians to hold their ground with all of their power, with all of the help that they can get.
Yeah.
And that is something that we have to understand when we decide to take a stand. And of course, if we connect this with the first questions that I asked, which lead to the individual, then you know, look, if you want to accumulate wealth, you will probably support a sort of an autocratic regime, because that enables you with connections to accumulate more wealth. You know, so we have to, the more we understand.
I think that's Putin's sentence, you know, accumulate wealth. I've seen photos of possibly his home, where he lives. And that is a wow.
Exactly. And it's fascinating for me that so many citizens, citizens of Russia, move abroad, and then they get the comfort and the protection of being in a good state, in a democratic state, or in a welfare state, but they still support what Russia is doing.
Well, in London, one of the most expensive areas where very rich people live, I remember when I was there, my son saying that many of those beautiful homes were bought by Russians. They got one of the yachts that belonged to one of the billionaire Russians. I have a question here that somebody asked me to ask you. Why does Putin think that Ukraine is Russia?
I'll give you
it's Eastern Ukraine. Eastern Ukraine is Russian.
He will use anything to get the control over the whole Iron Curtain. Okay, so we need to look in time. There was an agreement after the World War II in which they said that, everything that is under the Iron Curtain is influenced by Russia. And now the world evolved and Russia didn't adapt. They still kept the autocratic way, and it's not constructive anymore. It's not attractive anymore. Okay, so
and not applicable anymore.
They want to make it applicable, and that's why with their limited understanding, they reverted to something that was available 100 and something years ago to grab what they think it's theirs. And now there are Ukrainians that speak Russian.
Like you mentioned.
Exactly as there are Swiss that speak German, Italian, French.
Yes.
And it's okay. We are living an interesting world. Yeah.
Live and let live.
So it's not just that he wanted Eastern Ukraine. The fact that he went for Kiev, he wanted the whole Ukraine. He wanted to change the government and to put in place his puppet. So he wanted the whole Ukraine, and probably he also wants Moldova, he also wants the Baltics, he also wants Georgia, and depending on who gets elected in 2024 in US and who is sort of controlling NATO, he might want the other countries that are in NATO and think that nothing can touch them. But we should accept that the events of 2016 with Brexit, with Trump's election, nothing is for granted. Nothing is for granted. So we really need to put our energy in supporting the right things.
Yes.
You know, so it's if somebody believes that we should give countries here and there just because look how NATO expanded, well, think about those countries that joined NATO. Were they taken over? Were they bombarded? Or they were really happy and then really eager to fulfill everything so that they can get some protection?
Sure. On a peaceful manner. Yeah.
Exactly. And we are living complex times. We are living a continuously evolving world. Things will never be perfect, but we have to remember that going back in time and allowing or accepting that war is something that you can use if something bothers you, that is really a regression. So if you believe that, it's okay for Russia to invade another country because they feel offended, we lost. So it's not okay to invade another country. We have to remember that and to do everything, to put all the energy now so that this is stopped. This mentality is stopped. This mentality is wiped away.
Yeah, it's not a modern way of seeing things. It's regression, total.
Yeah. And there is a continuous war, but it's a cultural war. It's an economic war. Yes, and it's a pleasant war. Yeah, everybody's fighting for consumers, for markets, which is nice. Yes. It's okay. We have to put
it makes things evolve. If it stops, then no, you need to be moving things, definitely.
Yeah, and they will. So we don't have an option to say, yeah, it's good, it's comfortable, we stay like that, because that's not an option.
No.
And just to give you another example of a complex thing is humans from the civilized or from the very developed countries want the possibility to go to vacation in the most exotic places, but then they complain that they get immigrants. I say, well, look, yeah, we are interconnected. It goes both ways. So no, you don't get to do that and then you complain that somebody comes to your country. No, we have to learn to live together.
What I feel a little bit concerned with, George, are the children that have seen all this devastation, killing, what war does, that is so harmful for them, They lost parents, and it's something you'll never forget.
Yeah. Yes, and that's why it's you have to think that when they will become grandparents, the nephews or the children of their nephews will get to feel their pain because they will tell it. So that's why it's at least for 3 generations that these actions brought so much discord. Yeah.
Yeah, we say scars stay for many generations.
the Ukrainians will never, I mean, at least for 3 generations, will not forgive the Russians for doing this and for supporting it.
It's
the ones at
wonderful
home are
to
also
see, yeah, what the other countries did, opening their doors, you know, and receiving so many immigrants. It was very touching. You know, I was with tears in my eyes when I was watching, you know, families being welcomed and the children and the elderly. You know, it's there is hope. There is hope for this this world. You know, it touches me very deeply because personally, I had to leave the country I was born in Egypt because of the war. Nothing as violent as I see on television that is happening now, but still there were sirens, there were bombs, and we had to leave to emigrate from Egypt, and we came to Brazil. Yeah, I have tears in my eyes now.
I can,
you know,
I can imagine, and yeah, it is a trauma.
It is. And it's painful. It's stupid on the one hand. You know, wars destroy families, separate families, and I just pray that this ends very soon. You know?
We hope so too. Yeah. It is up to us, to every individual, to give the support in the right direction. And no matter how far away you are, you can influence around you, the 10 people, the 50 people that you meet, and you can take a stand because, yeah, there is somebody that supports the war. There is somebody that is very much against what Russia is doing in Ukraine. And then there is a big number of people that just say, it doesn't touch me, but it doesn't touch me yet because the trend has started. And if we don't take a stand now against it, yeah, it can lead to much more complex things.
Definitely,
so
definitely.
Now it's the moment to put the energy in and to yeah, take a stand, support the people that are in fighting, that are defending their country.
George, I want to thank you so much. It was so brilliant, and it really touches my heart, really. And
it was a pleasure to be here.
No, you're always welcome. And I already want to tell everybody our next happy hour is going to be on the 16th of June at 3 p.m. when we're going to have Renato Atias and Antonia Canide. They're going to be talking, telling us all about the indigenous Brazilian Indians, yes, and the museums that we have in Brazil. So we'll see you then.
That sounds very nice.
Yes, it's going to be wonderful. Thank you again. And
thank you,
I'll see you soon.
See you next time.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.